Every week, it feels like another book, movie, or show gets dragged across the internet, not for what it actually says, but for what people think it says. A tragic hero becomes problematic. A world-building detail gets twisted into a message. A satire is taken completely at face value. Across fandoms, from fantasy to sci-fi, outrage blooms where nuance used to live. It's not just isolated cases, and it's a pattern. We see this in politics. People are incapable of having non-nuanced discussions about these issues because the black and white mentality is so prevalent, but this has also infiltrated entertainment and art. Misreadings, overreactions, and shallow takes flood the conversation before most people have even finished the story.
Have we lost the ability to read between the lines? The world is drowning in hot takes and clickbait. And it seems that media literacy, the basic skill of understanding and interpreting a story, it's becoming a lost art. In this video, we're diving into why nuance is dying in fiction, how literal storytelling is taking over even in fantasy and sci-fi, and what that could mean for the future of stories we love. So, is social media discourse destroying nuance in fiction? Let's find out.
Not long ago, part of the magic of reading or watching fantasy and science fiction was wrestling with what wasn't immediately obvious. Stories invited you to dig deeper, to wonder if that cursed sword symbolized addiction, or if that crumbling empire was really about the anxieties of the author's own time. Today, though, audiences often expect everything to be spelled out. Characters state their motivations explicitly. Morality is neatly labeled. Themes are handed to you like a bullet point list at the end of a chapter. It's not just the creators, it's the culture. Somewhere along the way, we lost patience with ambiguity. Think of Brandon Sanderson. He's a master of structure and world building, but his style is very literal. There are rarely hidden meanings buried in his stories, no allegories that ask you to look again, no metaphors that reveal themselves years later. Think of Kaladin in Stormlight Archive. His mental health arc is handled with the subtlety of reading about depression on a Wikipedia page. Everything exists right there, on the surface, engineered to be absorbed quickly and clearly. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. His success showed that audiences love this style, but it also reflects a broader trend. Fantasy and sci-fi are becoming spaces where clarity is prized over mystery and plot is valued more than interpretation. Compare that with older writers like Tolkien, Ursula K. Le Guin, or Gene Wolfe. Their stories were thick with subtext. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings was a war story on a surface level, but it was also an elegy for a dying world, a meditation on loss, industrialization, and the fading of old beauty. Le Guin's Earthsea series explored power, identity, and balance with layers that most readers only fully appreciate as adults. Gene Wolfe built entire novels around unreliable narrators and hidden truths. These stories, they trusted you to find it yourself. Reading them was an active, imaginative experience.
And that's the real tragedy. When we flatten the stories into pure entertainment, when we strip away subtext and complexity, we lose something vital. Fantasy and sci-fi were never just about the spectacle of it, the dragons, the lasers, and the magic systems. At their best, they are about us, seen through a distorted, fantastical mirror. And if we only consume them passively, if we stop looking beneath the surface, we're losing good stories, but we are also losing one of the best tools people have for thinking critically about the world, which is art.
At its core, media literacy is simple. It's the ability to understand, interpret, and critically analyze media beyond what's immediately on the surface. It's not just about what a story says, but how it says it and why. It's the skill of noticing symbolism, understanding unreliable narrators, questioning perspectives, and seeing the bigger picture. Without media literacy, audiences are left vulnerable to missing key themes, misinterpreting meaning, or even absorbing dangerous ideas without realizing it. And in today's fast-paced media environment, those skills are more crucial than ever. Take a classic example like 1984. George Orwell didn't write it as a cool world-building exercise. It was a warning about totalitarianism, censorship, and propaganda. If you miss that, you miss the entire point. Or think about Breaking Bad. Walter White isn't a hero you're supposed to cheer for. The story deliberately uses his perspective to trick you, to make you question why you're rooting for someone becoming increasingly monstrous. Media literacy means recognizing that complexity. It means asking, is this character right Or is the story showing me something darker through his eyes? Unfortunately, a lot of people today confuse depiction with endorsement. If a story shows violence, they assume it glorifies violence. If it portrays a flawed character, they assume it must be agreeing with them. Look at the backlash around Game of Thrones. Many accused it of endorsing brutality, when in fact, much of the story was about the cost of violence, corruption, and power, or Consider the Boys, which gets misread by some as just cool, edgy superhero gore, missing the entire point that it's a brutal satire of celebrity culture, militarization, and corporate greed. When audiences can't see that distinction, they misfire completely on what the art is actually saying.
And that's the danger. Without media literacy, stories become hollow. Stripped of their power to challenge us, provoke us, and make us think differently. Don't get me wrong, a good fantasy or sci-fi story, it's you like eating a pizza. But if you have subtext, well-written stories, good thematic word building, it's just a much better pizza. Authors can strive to make the genre reach its maximal potential. People these days are constantly treating every character's opinions as the story's opinions or the author's opinions without really filtering what the point of view is and what the character arc is. We lose the ability to sit with discomfort because of instant gratification. We lose the ability to wrestle with gray ideas because in social media we're just constantly getting bombarded with stuff that reaffirms our worldview. So media literacy gives you the ability to be a good critic, but it also gives you the ability to think independently, to understand when a story is speaking to you, and even when it's holding up a mirror you might not want to look into because it makes you uncomfortable. Next, I want to talk about how Nuance is dead today, but before we do that, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're enjoying the content, every resource on the channel is completely free, including our Discord server, Lore Guys Tavern. Link for that below in the video description or in the channel's page. So the best way to support us is by just helping us appease the algorithm gods.
One of the biggest forces behind the death of Nuance is social media. Platforms like Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram aren't built to reward deep thinking. They reward speed, outrage, and emotional spikes. Algorithms prioritize content that provokes quick, intense reactions. A carefully layered argument or a slow burn interpretation doesn't stand a chance against a flashy, 5-second hot take. When the goal is to go viral, not to be thoughtful, subtle interpretations of stories are seen as boring or worse, confusing. So instead, the loudest, simplest, often most extreme versions of events take over. This environment has changed audiences too. People are getting used to stories that are fast, clear, and easy to digest. If something demands patience, if it asks you to sit with discomfort, or wonder what a scene really meant, many tune out or get frustrated. We've developed a taste for instant moral clarity. Heroes are perfectly good, villains are irredeemably evil. Stories with ambiguity, shifting loyalties, or complex character arcs feel messy or badly written to audiences trained by algorithm-driven platforms. In this environment, art that challenges you feels like an inconvenience. You can see this playing out in how audiences reacted to The Last Jedi. Instead of giving a clear-cut, hero saves the day arc, the movie dared to suggest that failure, disillusionment, and questioning heroes is part of growth, that Luke Skywalker might be flawed, that heroes can fall, and a lot of people hated it. They wanted a clean, triumphant myth, not a meditation on failure and legacy. It wasn't just about liking or disliking a movie, it was about expectations shaped by a culture that demands immediate gratification, obvious messaging, and emotional payoff without the slow work of interpretation. TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts only reinforce this, training us to expect everything to be explained in 60 seconds or less.
And that's how Nuance dies, not because people are incapable of understanding it, but because the entire ecosystem around us discourages it. We're surrounded by platforms that reward the fastest, shallowest interpretations and punish anything that requires reflection. The result? It's a culture that treats complexity like a flaw instead of a feature. If we don't push back, if we don't choose to slow down and think deeper, and if we don't choose to challenge our worldview a bit, we're gonna lose the kind of stories that actually mean something.
When nuance disappears, shallow storytelling quickly becomes the norm. Writers, seeing how easily complex works are misunderstood, or worse, weaponized against them, start pulling their punches. Many become afraid to leave anything open to interpretation, fearing backlash, cancellation, or even just poor sales. So stories get safer, simpler and flatter. The characters clearly announce their morals. The themes are obvious from the first chapter. Every loose thread is tied neatly by the end. And while that might make for easy consumption, it robs stories of the lingering questions and emotional complexity that make them worth revisiting. The damage doesn't stop at the stories themselves. It echoes into the audience. New generations raised on this kind of storytelling are increasingly unprepared for layered texts. Whether it's a modern masterpiece or a classic, critical thinking skills wither when narratives are served pre-chewed. Emotional depth fades when characters become cardboard cutouts of good and bad. Imaginative richness dries up when stories stop trusting the audience to dream beyond the words on the page. Think about the difference between a work like Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea, a quiet, deeply philosophical journey about balance, identity, and death, and a modern fantasy novel that spells out every plot twist, every character flaw, and every theme like bullet points in a PowerPoint presentation. One leaves you haunted, the other leaves you momentarily entertained, then forgotten. The good news is, Nuance isn't dead. It's just a little harder to find. Some creators are still fiercely committed to telling complex, layered stories, even in today's fast-paced media landscape. Take Andor, for example, a Star Wars story that doesn't just show rebellion as flashy battles, but as a slow, painful, deeply political process filled with moral compromises. It trusts the audience to sit with uncomfortable truths, to understand that heroism is messy, and that systems of oppression are insidious. It's proof that when creators have the courage to trust their audience, powerful, nuanced storytelling is still possible, and it hits harder than ever. And it's not just the creators. There are still audiences out there, maybe smaller, maybe quieter, who crave that kind of depth. People who want stories that don't just tell them what to think, but invite them to think for themselves. You see it in the enduring love for classics like Earthsea, The Left Hand of Darkness, Dune, and even in the cult followings for newer complex work. Nuance isn't extinct, it's endangered, yes, but it's being kept alive every time someone chooses to reread a layered novel instead of chasing the next viral trend. Every time someone supports an author who writes with faith in their readers' intelligence.
If you really want to engage in this sort of richer type of storytelling, be part of that audience, seek out works that challenge you, support the creators who trust you to read between the lines, reread the classics that make you wrestle with big ideas, and celebrate the stories that don't hand you easy answers. Because the more we reward nuance, the more we get stories that matter. It's stories that stay with us, change us, and remind us why we fell in love with fiction in the first place.
Today, we've looked at how the death of nuance and media literacy is reshaping the stories we consume. We've seen how social media trains audiences to favor outrage over understanding, how literal storytelling is becoming the norm, and how the loss of patience for complexity is impoverishing both writers and readers. But we've also seen that nuance isn't completely gone. There are still creators fighting for it, and audiences who hunger for it. The battle for deeper, richer storytelling isn't lost yet. It just needs people willing to fight for it. So, the next time you watch a show, read a book, or dive into a fantasy world, pause before jumping to a snap judgment. Ask what the story might be saying, not just what it seems to say. Sit with the uncomfortable moments, embrace the ambiguity, because that's where the real magic of storytelling lives. Not in easy answers, but in the questions that linger long after the story ends.
With all this in mind, what we can do about it is maybe, if you engage in discourse in social media, try to be a little bit more open for the critical arguments of the other sides. Try to support creators that are producing that kind of art and who respect your intelligence. Just be part of the audience that demands more. Feel free to share as well works that you enjoy. They're full of nuance, super complex, and just ripe for discussion in the comments. And overall, I just think it's worth it to engage with art. It could be a very rewarding experience. So that's it for the video today. Once again, the link for a Discord server is going to be in the video's description or on the channel's page. Hope to see you there, and see you next time.
Come join our tavern discussion of fantasy storytelling and world building here at Literalism. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Thanks for watching, and may your tales be ever epic.